starting out here as people are starting to stream into the Rythmia loving room, the love stream, if you will, from Rythmia. So grateful, so grateful, so grateful. I'm looking outside now at this amazing, amazing December day. And I am so grateful to be here in Costa Rica. It is sunny and windy. That's the Costa Rican. That's the Costa Rican winter, is sunny and windy. The winter winds. I'm looking. I'm just going to take a second because I don't see the chat coming on for some reason, and I want to make sure that we have our chat. So while my fabulous,
someone just gave a thumbs up to the chat, so it looks like we're good.
But we are on internet.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing it, and I want to see all of these beautiful comments. So anyway, while that's happening, hi everybody. People are streaming in. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to take a minute. I'm going to pull my computer up here so that I can read the introduction for David Richardson. David is a student at the Institute of Hermetic Philosophy, has been for over 25 years. And he is grateful to be able to communicate and contribute to the Institute by serving others in multiple capacities at the school, including as a board member, workshop coordinator, and the current president of the Hermetic Philosophy, Institute for Hermetic Philosophy. In his professional career, David is a senior vice president of digital innovation and influence for Allison & Partners, a full-service communications firm. He has led digital strategy for Fortune 500 companies with clients such as Procter & Gamble, Merrick, Johnson & Johnson, and Coty. And he has been an award-winning thought leader in the field of social media, digital marketing, and technology for over 15 years, and was recognized by the Holmes Report in their Innovator 25. Someone shaping the future of marketing, communications, through social and digital influence and engagement. I know you're saying blah, 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 but that's all really impressive, man.
That sounds really long. I'm like, why did I submit that long?
It's impressive. And, you know, it's important to share what an amazing person you are. So, David, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And you know, when we were talking a little bit offline before, there were three topics that really came up that we wanted to touch on. One was the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy. And then the second was around the evolution of consciousness. And as long as we're talking about the evolution of consciousness, let's talk about the evolution of race consciousness and racism. And so those are the three topics we'd really like to cover. As we begin, David, tell us a little bit about the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy and start there. The Institute for Hermetic Philosophy.
Sure. It's funny because, like you said, those three topics are really just one topic. You know, it's just all about the evolution of consciousness at the end of the day. And so for me, the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy really has been my way to really help me learn to shed the layers and layers of persona, of false identity that we're all basically handed from the moment we arrive on this planet, right? We get a name, we get a neighborhood, we get a race and an education and a media and, you know, all these things that kind of get stuck to us, especially before we're 7. We have no volition over any of it. It's just like, here you go. Here's who you are. Here's your identity. And then at some point, you know, some people go, wait a second, you know, what part of this is real? You know, what part of this is really me? You know, and the Institute, it was founded by Dr. Dario Salas Summer, who recently passed away, but it was founded in Santiago, Chile, over 50 years ago. And it's fundamentally dedicated to exactly that, stripping down the false layers of identity that we all end up with, because it's impossible not to, and to learn how to grow that divine spark within and to be more and more in harmony with that divine spark within that connects you to everything. We all have it. We're all part of this greater whole, kind of like we were talking about before we got on this, call that, we're all connected to this greater intelligence that some call God, whatever you want to call it, but we each have a part of that in us. And if we can grow that part, and the more we grow that part, the more we identify ourselves with that versus the false identity stuff, the happier we are, the more successful we are, the more in harmony with nature and the universe and everyone else around us we are. And that's actually why the website for the school is growyourbeing.com, because it's all about growing that essential being and dismantling all the false stuff about yourself.
Here at Rythmia, we teach, our teaching is one of our main intentions is to first show me who I've become, which is show me, all the stuff that the grit and grime of the journey, and then merge me with my soul, come back to a place of wholeness. And our teaching is that there's a fundamental core trauma or split, right, where we are perfect, whole, and complete, and then something happens. I didn't get fed on time. I didn't get held when I wanted to, or something on that spectrum of abuse, of mental, physical abuse. Something happens. We decide we're not enough to get our needs met. I've got to become something else. Yeah, and that's the beginning of this split and sense of separation. And it sounds like this grow your being is harmonizing that again. Is that?
Yeah. It's very similar. I mean, the only thing I would say is it's not one thing that happens. Like traumas happen, absolutely, and they're splitting. But it's almost like everything that we're told we are is gunk. That is not who we are in our essence. It is not our timeless being, right? So we end up getting caught. I mean, almost like programmed, like in the Matrix, where we're told, we're given an identity, and we're given a name, and we're given a religion, and we're given if you were born in Costa Rica, for instance, you'd be very different than if you were born in America, or if you're born in New York, you're very different than if you're born in Texas or born in Russia. Like the conditioning you get wherever you are is very different. So all that stuff is not innately who you are. It's great. You need it to grow up, and it helps you kind of understand the world in a certain way. But at a certain point, if you don't actually make, as Jung says, make the unconscious conscious, if you don't actually grow that consciousness, of internal consciousness, that light being inside yourself, that spark of God, that divine spark, who can take all of that sort of unconscious, that stuff that you just kind of took on as who you are, you don't actually start to question it all and process it all. And through this, what we call internal alchemy, you're turning all that kind of low vibration, almost like canned information that you haven't really thought about and haven't really processed. You go through this process of turning that sort of darkness into light. And in alchemy, they say you're turning, lead into gold, right? That really is like raising the vibration of everything in you that is kind of dark, dense, unconscious, and bringing it into the light that is your true being, that's connected to everything, right? That is connected to the universal intelligence. Daria Salas Summer says you connect with your spirit, and then you manifest your spirit inside your body so that it exists on this plane, here, today, now.
So the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy is really an institute for a realization of your inherent wholeness and perfection.
Correct.
And it's based on some ancient teachings.
Well, I mean, I think what's amazing, and so many people have found how much wisdom is in the ancient teachings, right? I mean, this is connected to ancient Egyptian mystery schools, but Hermes Trismegistus, who was the founder of those schools, probably came from before there. It came from other times, maybe even not even this planet. This is a universal knowledge that goes beyond a school. It just happens to have names at certain times, but it's sort of been this thread. This knowledge has been this thread through human society since its inception, and it is the great opportunity to again realize your true divine being that is kind of hiding, and that you're not identified with it. You don't know that you are underneath all of the false things that you have been taught that you are.
So, I love those esoteric teachings, and I'd love to, I mean, is there a principle that what's your go-to principle?
Go-to principle. Well, it's funny because they're almost all holistically, they're all one. There's 7 basic principles to Hermetic philosophy that are in the Kabbalion and in Daria Salah Summer's books, but they're all connected. So as I was talking about alchemy, there is the principle of vibration, that everything vibrates. We know this now from quantum physics. Everything's in motion, but at the same time, everything is polar, right? There's also this concept of polarity where you can actually take a vibration and raise that vibration up. And as you raise it up, it vibrates faster. And as it vibrates faster, because we're all basically transmitters and receivers of energy, we're all then able to connect with different thoughts, beliefs, forces, energies as we actually raise our level of energy and raise our level of vibration. So that is that divine alchemy where you're able to take what's kind of very dense in you and things that are a lot of times like those traumas you talked about. I'll share something that I just sort of recognized that was really strong for me recently, is that I realized I grew up around mostly women, loved them, very thankful, but my dad left home when I was young, and my grandfather was kind of like the house husband guy. I love him, but he wasn't like strong guy, and my grandmother and my aunt were like used to speak in this very cutting way towards each other. It's very diminishing and like I don't know. And what I was getting feedback from friends of mine that sometimes they'd sort of be shocked by the way I was talking to them. And I'm like, what? I'd analyze my words and I'm saying everything I said, it was fine. What was it? And they're like, it's something in the energy. We can't explain it. And I didn't understand it for a long time. And just recently, really a couple of weeks ago, into my consciousness, as I explored this, I realized it became conscious that it was almost like the Manchurian Candidate, where like unconsciously this program from the way my grandmother used to speak and the way my aunt used to speak would come through me energetically, and I was completely unaware of it. Completely unaware of it. And so I get a reaction and I wouldn't understand the reaction, like the Manchurian Candidate, right? He goes and like shoots somebody and then doesn't remember he shot someone. And as it became conscious to me, I was like, oh my goodness, whoa, there's something I'm doing that's hurtful that I have no idea about. And I don't want to hurt people. Like, I don't want to be doing that. It was like such an unconscious thing in me that it hurt me. I started bawling when I kind of saw it for the first time and remembered how hurtful my grandmother's language was sometimes to people, and recognizing that this was unconsciously manifesting through me. It was very hard. Like, it really was like, I started crying. Like, I can't believe that I've been doing this and I didn't even know it, because in my conscious self, and the part of me I believe myself to be, I'm very respectful to people and I love people and I want to be this light person and always encouraging, and completely without my knowing, like I said, very Manchurian Candidate, very like I just go to sleep for a second, fire the payload, wake back up again and not know what happened, and then I'd get this reaction from someone and I'd be like, what happened? And so it's something I'm actually working on now, is making that unconscious action, energetic action, more conscious. And the process for me has been a lot of meditation, bringing awareness into this. Just by bringing awareness into it, it helps. I can feel it like in the back, in the base of my, like in the base of my neck, and I can feel it like in the base of my spine, like where these old, almost conditioned behaviors exist physically. And I can feel the consciousness going in there and almost like unraveling those things and like detaching the program. It's almost like, again, like the Matrix, or like pulling wires out of a computer, like where you can start to feel these old habitual patterns breaking. And so that's something I'm working on very actively now. I hope that explains like a little bit about that process, because as I do that, and as I make that part of me that was obscure to me, right? And completely unconscious to me. As I make it more conscious, I have much more success in my relationships with everybody around me who, understood, because they knew I didn't mean things, but still it would kind of bite in a way, and they'd be like, "Hey, that, where'd that come from?" Because it's so not part of who I normally am.
I don't mean to be jumping around, but as you
No,
were
let's do it.
that, it just seems to me that is a perfect departure point to nudge into the conversation about racism.
Yeah.
Because I heard Beverly D'Angelo say this in an interview recently about, that we are, like you said, these unconscious things. Like, you're a guy who spent his life being conscious, right?
Doing my best.
Your adult life, right? But that's been where your awareness has been, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not saying you're, essentially you are perfect, and yet there's expansion, right?
Right.
There's more to be revealed. And we all are. And
yes,
you have been conscious about that. And at this point in your journey, you've been at least 20 plus years on this
25,
journey. 25, right? So to have a realization about an unconscious pattern that was out picturing in your relationship with people is such a perfect example of what Beverly D'Angelo was talking about in terms of racism. She said, look, I know that I have these habitual patterns that, it's like we're so wet with it, we don't even know we're wet. Like, you've just been standing in the rain so long and someone hands you an umbrella, you're like, I don't even know I'm wet.
That's it.
And you said it so beautifully. Wouldn't I want to know that I was hurting somebody?
Yeah.
My intention is not to hurt anybody.
No, the exact opposite. It's to help and be a benefit to the world and these people I love. And when I realized I was kind of shooting daggers at them unconsciously, it hurt me so much to know that was happening without my awareness. And in a sense, and Dario Summer, who's my teacher, says that when you really understand how unconscious humans are, to the point where we're basically asleep, we're basically sleepwalking, that it's hard to really be angry at anyone because everyone's just kind of doing their best from their own level of consciousness.
Yes.
And that's really true. So you get to this profound understanding that, I don't hold all the time because, this guy was pretty amazing, but, when Jesus Christ said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." When you can recognize that people are operating out of their complete unconsciousness, even when they're doing harm, even when they're, coming at you with some pretty hard stuff, that's a profound level of awareness. Not that you shouldn't defend yourself and you shouldn't protect yourself and you shouldn't take care of yourself, but just to be aware that someone is coming at you just because that's their own unconscious pattern. And that's what racism is.
Well, and this is what I really want to talk. What I thought was so perfect about your example is there's a whole group. I mean, there's a thought that says that liberal progressives actually do more harm than a blatant, Proud Boys or KKK member, right? Because
Martin Luther King said that.
Right. Yeah. I'm good. No, I'm not racist. I'm good. Right. You could have easily said that about yourself. I'm good. I've been studying this for 25 years. I'm pretty aware of myself. Don't tell me that I have something to work on. Right.
Yeah.
and that's what really, I think, is such an important piece for us. It's a hard conversation to have, but this idea of becoming aware of and it's not bias, right? Bias is different than racism. So let's start with defining our topic. How would you define, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but can you define racism?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm not yet. My sister is actually a world-renowned expert on this. Jennifer Richardson, look her up. She's a Yale professor. So I would defer to her for kind of definitions on this stuff. What I can say is that, I do say bias sometimes and racism because the labels tend to make people defensive. And I don't want to get to a place where once you get defensive, people shut down. But if you can just say, hey, in your subconscious, there is some kind of bias that kind of selects things unconsciously one way or the other, or makes decisions unconsciously one way or the other. I mean, I get why people get into those word choices and things like that, and want to talk about it blatantly and say, especially when you have bias that has to do with race, it is racism. But I always kind of shy away from that, because I don't want it to become I don't want people to get polarized and defensive. So to understand that whatever, I'll go back into the world, whatever is inside shows up on the outside, right? So if you're in a company and you look around and it's like all the executives are white, or white males sometimes, you can't say there's no bias in your company, right? It's like your world reveals the choices that you're making, the subconscious choices you're making all the time. Your neighborhood, your friend group, those types of things. So I think, everybody, and race is one thing I think is coming into the American psyche, because we, after Obama was elected, we all kind of believed, not everybody, but a lot of people were like, post-racial America, we're done.
Exactly.
I mean, even the American, the sort of African American Museum in Washington is like, you go through whole history, and then at the end it's like Obama, and at the end of the exhibit, it's like, wait a second. And I think these years, frankly, were a backlash to that. Again, I'll talk about my sister, because she is a renowned expert on this, and she's done some scientific research that showed that when, I'll say it in this case, American white people were reminded that by, I think it's 2050, we're going to become a majority minority country, and they statistically became significantly more conservative. So without their knowledge, unconsciously. And so years later, what does our, soon to be, the president who's outgoing, I'll say it that way, I think a lot of his approach was kind of beating that drum of, fear the brown people, whether it's, people from the South, people from, other countries, and that drummed up a lot of, I still believe, unconscious fear of that made people more conservative. And we're dealing with that polarization in our country right now.
Let's define some more things. I think conservatism is a desire to maintain.
Keep things the same. Correct.
Exactly. Right. I want to conserve this process. Progressivism is adding on. Right. So those are two beautiful. There's nothing wrong with conservatism.
Nope.
Right.
Not as a belief. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Now, racism, I would say, is a belief in the inferiority or superiority of individuals based on their race.
Correct.
Right. So I can have a very innocuous conversation with somebody that would say, hey, if I had a bunch of different people and I was going to be looking to go to a math contest or an engineering event, I'm going to pick a Chinese person. Right.
That's racism.
but there's this sort of like bias, not more than bias, right? That says, well, Chinese people are smart at math. And Black people are really good at athletics. And, all of these different ideas that seem to be proved through our experience. But the truth is, the differences between and among individuals in any subset are just as great as the differences between and among the subsets. So there's just as much difference between Chinese people as there are between Chinese and Arabs, So I think getting some definition here is important in this idea of coming back to how can I explore within myself, because fundamentally what you said was so beautiful. I don't want to hurt anybody. The majority of us, we don't want to hurt anybody. And so wouldn't I want to know?
Yeah. Let me just, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say the only challenge with the picking apart the conservatism and the racism thing is history, right? Because our history is steeped in the supremacy of white people. in America at least. That's how it was built. I mean, there's no argument there. So unfortunately, sometimes conservatism means like make America great again. Sometimes reflects to remember how good it was in the 50s. You know, it's good for some people in the 50s, but not everybody in the 50s, right? So there is this unfortunate, because of our history, you know, this call back to other times when things weren't as fair for everybody. So I think there's conservatism, which is fiscal conservatism, which is like, let's be conservative fiscally, but then there's socially conservatism, which, because of our history, social conservatism tends to have a power structure built into it. Actually, that we'd all love to unlearn.
I would disagree. And here's, I'm going to offer this.
Yeah.
What you're pointing to is regressivism, right? So there's conservatism. I want to conserve the way things are, or regress back to some idealized nostalgia in the past. So I would argue that what Make America Great Again is a regressive philosophy. I want to go back to some perceived, vision. Conservatism is let's keep what we got.
Fair enough.
And I think this is really interesting because, this flows into the next topic, the evolution of consciousness.
Right.
Right. So we're really looking at I'd love to know, here's a couple of people that I might throw out. I don't know if you know Hayden White.
I don't know Hayden White. No.
He was the chair of the Department of the History of Consciousness at UC Santa Cruz. No longer a department. I think he's long gone, but he wrote a book called Meta History that I love when he talks about evolution of consciousness. What do you mean when you say evolution of consciousness?
Yeah, I mean exactly what Daria Salas Summer says. It's the growth of the almost the physical growth of that light, that divine spark within oneself that enables one to perceive things in a less conditioned way, and in a way that is more consciousness is an energy. So in a way that is more in tune with the universal intelligence and the universal harmony. Because the truth is that on another level, race doesn't exist, right? None of this stuff is real. It's all just a fiction. And so while we have to sort of talk about it being, a thing, because in our day-to-day society, people are still struggling with it at another level of consciousness, it's all an illusion. It's like waking up in the Matrix and knowing that none of it matters, right?
Race is a construct. I mean,
yes, of course.
There's only a few percentage difference between us and chimpanzees. As
absolutely,
humans, right?
absolutely.
They're the genetic differences between races, because we can look at this and see, like, before there were just a few races. Now we've got I'm Lebanese.
Right.
But I'm considered white.
Right.
Right. Because it's just, but sometimes now they want to add Arab. Right.
Yep.
It's all a construct. Now,
absolutely.
The evolution of consciousness, you said is unconditioned. You said
correct.
Something to tell me about.
I said as you evolve, you become less and less conditioned. So that example was, one example was what I just told you about the grandmother program, right? The part of me that unconsciously was doing something and mechanically doing something that I was unaware of. So as you raise your level of consciousness, more and more of that mechanical behavior, you become aware of it. It becomes, and by becoming aware of it, you're able to overcome it and make the unconscious mechanical behavior more conscious. Mechanical thinking, mechanical ways of being and acting and talking, all change as you become more conscious, as you have more of this light consciousness energy within you.
So in essence, evolution of consciousness for you is a movement from less awareness to more awareness.
Yes, absolutely.
And do you see any levels, like where do you start? And
well, I mean, it's infinite. It's infinite, right? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, because, just like vibration is infinite, we're on a human scale, but there's levels of consciousness below us as humans, and there's levels of consciousness above us as humans. So it really is infinite. But where you start is where you start. It's almost like a keyboard that is like infinite keys, and each key kind of is a note, and those notes can go up or down and forever. Wherever you start is with your level of, mostly people start with their programming, right? With their, like, starting to question. What happens with most people, and it's happened with me, it probably happened with you, is at some point you start to question your reality. You start to question, is everything I believe true? Is everything I believe about myself true? Is everything I believe about my country true? Is everything I believe about the world true? And some people say yes and absolutely and double down and reaffirm that. And some people start to deconstruct that and start to say, maybe not, maybe it's not, and start to question themselves and their reality. And by questioning your reality, you start to take apart some of those false beliefs and mechanisms. So, you know, that's the first step. And then as you do that, you start to see other things in you. There's a whole new world in yourself if you can start to question all of your beliefs.
Can I share with you some of the two different authors that I really have connected with around the evolution of consciousness? One was Hayden White, and the other was my teacher, Michael Bernard Beckwith.
Okay.
So very simply, Michael Beckwith begins, you know, obviously, as you said, it's infinite, but he starts with victim mentality. Like a lot of times people really begin in, there's something outside of me that is, you know, causing me this issue. It's God, it's bad luck, it's my mother, it's my father. There's something outside of me. And then we move into, through forgiveness work around that, we move into another, you know, not really level, but spiral of manifester consciousness, that we have some facility, like, I actually can create things and manifest things in your life. And then like our current president is a stellar manifester.
Yeah.
Like, right.
Very true.
You can get stuck in manifestation and it's all about, you know, ego. Or if you move beyond that level, it's through an understanding of it's not just about me being able to manipulate things to get what I want or create my version of reality, but that I'm part of something greater. And now we move from me to we, and we're in another level of consciousness around flow or channel consciousness, where all the things things are starting to flow in life, right? Like I'm really starting to, things are just seem easy and grace, and it's not. So the first level of consciousness is it's happening to me, something outside. Second level, it's happening through me, or as, or I, like I'm doing it, right? And then the third quote level of consciousness is it's happening through me, right?
Yeah.
As a channel, something's moving through me.
That's great. Yeah, beautiful.
Fourth level is sort of being consciousness, where there's no separation.
Yeah.
Peek through.
That's beautiful.
So there's four there. Hayden White, I love this. He talks about consciousness in terms of rhetoric and the four master tropes of rhetoric: metaphor, metonymy, synecdoche, and irony.
Okay.
And so metaphor is the comparison of two dissimilar things. His example is primitive man heard the thunder and called it Zeus, right? Like that's like no angry man. That sounds like an angry man, but no angry man I've heard. It must be God, which seems to me to fit with victim mentality. Like there's something out there, right? We're still, you know, the metaphor is the first level. I don't know what that is. I know what this is. I'm going to compare them to get some understanding. And then metonymy is the breaking down of things into their constituent parts, right? So this is sort of the age of enlightenment, right? We start to like break things and understand how things work. And then synecdoche is the part for the whole, like the king is the head of the state, right? So there's a part for the whole. So synecdoche is the next level, where after we've broken things down, deconstructed things, as you said, we can then make broad associations, right?
Correct.
And
you
then
start realizing what part you are of the whole.
Yes. And then he says, irony is the fourth level of consciousness, because we have so much facility. We've broken it apart. We put it back together. Now we can play with it. It's ironic revision. And then for him,
Interesting.
it just spirals. This is the history of human consciousness spiraling over and over and over again to new levels of understanding.
It is spirals. That's absolutely true. That's interesting. That's very interesting. And almost an irony is like, I can see how irony is almost like the great cosmic joke that I think there's this old proverb that says, it's a Chinese proverb that says, when I was young, I didn't know very much. I thought a teacup was a teacup. And then I got older and wiser, and I realized a teacup was not a teacup. And then I got even older and wiser and realized a teacup was a teacup. It's sort of like that circular wisdom that you sort of deconstruct everything and you get back to an understanding that becomes much more simple, and seeing that you kind of are the whole, right? You're part of the whole and the whole at the same time in this holographic universe.
And I would also add, probably the development of consciousness is a movement from knowing less or knowing more to knowing less.
Absolutely. Right. The more you know, the more you know you don't know. The more you think you know, the less you know.
Absolutely. Well, consciousness itself is expansive as awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've been talking about some heady things. How do you bring that to daily practice?
Yep. So every day for me is about raising my level of consciousness, because you start off asleep, and the whole idea is not to finish the day asleep, right? To wake up and really raise your level of consciousness. Use that vibratory thing I was telling you about. So I run several times a week in the morning, first thing in the morning. I do breathing exercises. I meditate. I do a bunch of things first thing in the morning to sort of prime the pump and reconnect me to, my higher being, my spiritual self, and start to feel, like you said, that flow of energy moving through me. So it's not the smaller identity of David Richardson going through the day, but it's my kind of more aware self that is a different being, that is not in that same conditioned state. And when I'm in that state, it almost like it awakens the intelligence of my heart. It awakens the intelligence of my physical being. It awakens my energetic intelligence. It awakens different parts of me that then are much more responsive to the world around me. So I'm much more centered. I can feel things on much deeper levels. I'm much more sensitive. I'm much more perceptive. I can hear my guidance from, that force that moves through me a lot clearer. And so it's not the little me just trying to make it through the world and going to work and doing those things, but it's more of a larger version of me that's almost like magnetic center that is in flow with everything around me, almost like doing Tai Chi through the world. And everything that comes at me, no matter what happens, it's kind of in flow, and I'm able to just harmonize with it and keep it in flow. And that's when I know that I'm in my center, right? I feel myself as when things come, even when things come very strong, I can still sort of stay harmonized and stay sort of balanced and be present for it, and not the moment I get reactive or defensive or anything like that is when my old mechanisms are showing themselves, and I'm becoming more mechanical, which is the opposite of conscious, right? It's like it's mechanicity versus consciousness. So the first step is to really understand what your mechanisms are, so you can start to see when they arise.
I too am not on the automatic start plan.
Yeah.
I know people that get up, and I mean, beautiful practitioners that I know from Agape, and they're like, I wake up and it's like la 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 la. It's been beautiful. I'm just so happy to be alive. That's not me. I'm just saying. I wake up and I am like, I gotta crank myself up. Breath work, some meditation. I have to do this ritual of centering myself, and I feel my body physically changing.
Yes, absolutely.
As I do this, and my day is completely different.
The greatest gift you can give to yourself. I mean, I don't wake up in a bad state. I've been doing this for years, but no matter how I wake up, putting in anywhere between a half an hour to an hour and a half, depending how much time I have, always pays off in incredible dividends in terms of my ability to be present and positive in the world. So it's something that I don't miss, actually. It's really important to me.
I'll just say this really quickly. I've also had the experience lately where life has been moving so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some days where I haven't been able to do much. And it's okay. Like,
yes, of course.
I had to get to of course, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist and I want to do everything perfectly.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's like, I missed this today. And for me, it was a huge evolution of consciousness to be like, it's okay. You're still
Yes, that's even worse. Yeah.
Right.
That mind, the mind that wants to blame you for missing the thing is also taking you down that spiral, right? Because it's judging, it's blaming, it's all that, which is all just mind shadow, right? So you have to be like, okay, I missed it today. Sometimes when I was, didn't have, now it's pretty much standard for me, but when it was less so, sometimes, I'd have to rush off to work and maybe I just spend 5 minutes in the bathroom doing a breathing exercise just because I felt myself off center and I knew I didn't want to be off center for the rest of the day. So I just found another time, because it doesn't have to be in the morning. It can be 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, just to bring yourself back. It's just about, at the end of the day, it's just about checking into yourself. Okay, where am I? Where am I? Am I out here? Like, is my mind running and am I just in a million places and trying to chase the day? Or am I kind of in myself, and am I centered? Am I rooted? And am I, do I feel what's happening in my internal being? Do I feel my emotional world? Do I feel my energetic world? Am I sensitive to what's going on around me? Or am I just, almost like you said before, am I just manifesting out of ego and, putting stuff out in the world, but not really being perceptive to what's happening around me?
I was just enjoying the conversation so much, and as always, time flies by.
Oh yeah, look at that.
I know, right? First of all, I want to say to everybody, I'm so sorry. For some reason, I'm not seeing the chat, so I haven't been able to say hello to anybody. I haven't been able to respond to any questions. But thank you all so much. And David, I'll ask you one last question.
Sure.
I kind of like to ask it this way. If you were in my shoes, what question or would you ask that I didn't ask, or what would? So that's part A. If you want to answer that, what question would you ask that I didn't of you, or tell us something about you, some fact or some fact that you know that you want to share. So it doesn't have to be like something personal about you. It could be like, I happen to know the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow. Just some fact that you know, or something about you that you want to share. Or what question would you ask that I didn't ask?
The thing about me that I wanted to share was just really that thing I shared about my grandmother, because it's the thing that's touched me the most in the past week or two. It was really vulnerable for me to share that, because my self-image is one of someone who is out to help people and help people grow, and just sort of, I've seen something that went so against my self-image that I didn't see it for years, was shocking to me, and hurtful to me, that I was hurting other people. So I guess the thing I would say is that we all have that, right? No matter how long we've been on this journey, there's always more. Like we said, the more you know you don't know. So let's all have the humility to just always be open to see what we might not be seeing. The world is always giving us feedback on ourselves. And the more we can have the humility at wherever we are, to go, okay, what am I not seeing? What is life trying to teach me right now? Because we all live in a big school, right? This is a big school/gym, and we're always getting feedback as to what the lesson is. And there's always something to learn if we're able to keep our eyes open, keep our heart open to what life is trying to teach us. And I know that's simple, and a lot of people say that, but it's so true. And if you're really tuned into the truth of that, not from your head, like, yeah, I get it, but like in the depths of your soul and in your heart. And if you really live according to that, life will be absolutely transformative for you. And yeah, absolutely do that. And if you want to check out the school I was talking about earlier, check out growyourbbeing.com. And that's one way. There's lots of ways, but that's one way to check out, find out what's going on inside your internal world.
I love it. And it seems to me that what you were saying is, what am I not willing to see, hear, know, or feel about myself? That's the best to begin it all. Beautiful. David, it was an absolute pleasure. I'm so grateful that we got to do this. And
me too.
Thank you for the work that you do in the world. I know that our paths will cross again. And come see us at Rythmia. And
I can't wait. It sounds great. Cool. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yes, thank you all so much. Peace and blessings, everybody.